Welcome back to Kin in Line. I make this part 148. We're still in the East London Zoo, around about 2004 or so. So you don't see many camels around in South Africa, so it's quite a pleasure to see these animals here. And here a nice page full of sketches. Then I took out a bolder felt tip pen, I see, to do this. I think this is an African wild dog, the top here, seen from the front and the side. And again, two of the lions in the enclosure. Once again, a kind of composite image that you don't get with a camera. As is this. So 3 very different species. I think that's our tiger at the top. This looks a bit stripy. Our primate friend at the bottom. And then a porcupine. These are nocturnal, so you also don't see those too often, but I seem to have caught this one actually going for a drink. In fact, there was a lovely little enclosure full of these things, so there must have been dozens of them. You just saw those quills quivering. Again, primates, some sort of long-limbed fellows, and then civets or some nocturnal cat top there. On that duck pond I mentioned, a stately goose, swan, at the bottom there. Famous in the UK, and I think they're not indigenous at all to this country, but they had one there. And then some sort of duck. Yeah, there is a species of duck with a big red knob on the top of its beak, which is what this one probably is. Then some sort of budgie. Again, combined to make a nice composite sketch. And here we're back with our friend the Lion King. Kin's Lion King. And then there's an owl section too. Remember these as kids, we used to go there quite often. And I mean, not much had changed in 30 years, except the little smarty train no longer ran. So there's our giraffe again. And then this is my niece Emily. So she would have only been about 6 or 8 then, I think. She's on a seesaw. That's what she's holding onto there. And talking of seesaws, this is Doug, my younger son. Tall man now, of about 6'3", and he always had these long, gangly limbs as a young teenager. You could see he was going to grow into a tall person right from when he was a kid. This is my mom. Back then, that was 20 years ago, she would have been about 70. Always up for a game, and she's on the swing, on the seesaw, I think, with Emily sort of piggybacking on her. Not sure who that is at the bottom. Now we're back on the Bonza Bay beach, and this is a view. There's a point, a rocky point, sort of halfway between Bonza Bay and Nahoon. And this is looking back, I think, from there towards Bonza Bay. So the beach, the Bonza Bay beach starts that side, and then you come around this point and then head off to the west towards Nahoon Mouth. And as usual, I put a little figure in there just to give a sense of perspective, I suppose. Sand dunes behind there. This, I think, is our son Luke, probably about 16 at this point. Going through that tricky adolescent period, that also drawn probably at that same point on the beach. I think there's some waves breaking behind him there. This, I remember, is my nephew Stuart, now a lawyer in Cape Town, but back then only dreaming of what might come in his future. And I think we've reached the end of this book, apart from that little doodle at the end. And in this book I also found these. So this one is dated 2004, probably from the same period roughly. And I think this is Luke again, seated on one of the magnificent rocks at Schoenmakers Kop, just to the west of Port Elizabeth. And he becomes almost part of the rock formation. And this was drawn at the same time, I think, and this is the sketch I did of that coastline, which I watercolored later. It's a real turbulent sort of stretch of coast, beautiful, huge waves breaking onto rocky sort of outcrops, extend far out from the shore, several of them, and they're creating these little coves. Actually a very beautiful, one of PE's real attractions, a sort of hidden gem, because it's not like your beachfront. Yeah, so this is another scrapbook that I converted to a drawing book, and I started with a few of my wackies. As usual, I've got the figure in the foreground and then his body sort of splayed behind. Same here. This seems to be female, but I'm not sure what that tail's doing up on the left there. It's certainly this person is not impressed by it. And another one of our transhuman creatures, Mr. Schwab's chaps. Yeah, no, Schwab would be happy with this experiment, probably after the 8th jab or something. So then we went down to Storms River. There's a little village there. Storms River, about 150 k's, I think, to the west, along the. So the mouth is very impressive, but also the mountains, because it's on the Tsitsikamma, adjacent to the Tsitsikamma range of mountains. And so I was able to. There's a little house on the left, and then this beautiful peak with some red hot pokers or something in the foreground. I've tried scanning this and it absolutely doesn't scan, but it actually looks rather nice in real life, as you can see here. And then I had an interesting little interlude on the beachfront at King's Beach. So I drew this group very quickly in charcoal, and then you can see I watercolored it later. Okay, it wrinkled up the paper somewhat, but again, I think it's quite a nice painting, really. And on that same occasion, where these two people walking their dogs, and the dogs are merely suggested, as are the people. You know, this one looks almost like a pig. And so, watercolored again. And this is a unique Kinross painting. Here you really do get the sense of the use of line. I mean, look at those lines defining his stomach, just accentuating the bulge, the battle. And then these two kids were playing. I think they might have been so young they were still in the nude, just playing on the seashore. So I managed to also incorporate this little boat yacht sailing past. And so we have a nice composition there. African kids there. And then the view out towards the harbour. You can't actually see any cranes, but a few people walking as some surf tumbles in from the right. And that sort of thing sticking up on the left. Now we're back. This thing certainly moves around, but I think we could be at Van Staden's Wildflower Reserve, unless we're already in the Drakensberg, because at some point we do go there. Yeah, no, this is the Drakensberg. So we went to Sani Pass and did a hike nearby before setting up the pass. And then I just while walking, stopped and did this quick sketch of this quite weird shaped top of a mountain. It looks kind of like an animal. So again, this is to me, this is a painting in its own right. Yeah, and then a view up towards the Drakensberg at Sani Pass before we set off. I think the pass is kind of at the top there. And as usual, it's a lot of turbulent cloud. So the last time I really sketched the pass, the mountains of Drakensberg Mountains was probably back in the 1979 from the south, you know, when I was in the army. There's another view from where we actually spent the night at that's the roof of one of the houses, little sort of resorts, and then the mountains behind. Now I think we've moved to that farm in the Karoo, and this is Red Mountain. Very quick sketch, coloured in, and just almost abstract composition here. But this mountain in the middle of winter lights up because the sun sets directly behind the viewer and reflects off this mountain and just becomes this glowing. uncoloured in. Which is a shame, I should have just continued. I think also on that Karee farm, yeah, here's more. So there's that Los Krantz again. I think this one is called Stockton Kop. And that's Versier Kerf behind on the left there. Versier means sight in Afrikaans. So this mountain range is like the barrel of a gun, I think they use. That's in the analogy. Yeah, so I think I'm going to have to call a halt for now. We can zoom in on Los Krantz and Stockton. Until next time, cheers.